It's interesting how owning your own business either teaches you who you are or kills you. I'm Jamie O'Kane, CPA, Small Business Advanced Tax Planning and Compliance Extraordinaire, and this is the Abundant Beans Podcast, the podcast that takes my love for learning what makes people tick while digging into the good, bad, and ugly of small business ownership. We strive to give you the insight that only those in the trenches of being and working with entrepreneurs can provide.
Well, we do primarily work on things that are financial in nature. Mm-hmm. So we can help with budgeting, which I know is every veterinarian's favorite word. We help with understanding what the numbers mean, and sometimes that's starting like from the very beginning with, what is a profit and loss report and why do you care, and what is the balance sheet and how do you know when it's wrong, and because these are still numbers, people, but they're medical data. So they're great at understanding lab reports. They could read them in their sleep. But when you switch that to the business side, it doesn't come naturally. Mm-hmm. So we also really work with practice managers so that they can take on more of that analytic role and report to the owner veterinarians. We help a lot with profitability, with increasing business value, and helping, for a while we had to help clients understand that profit isn't a four-letter word, that you have to be profitable in order to maintain your position in the community. So, and you have to be there because you are supporting people and their families. So but I think more and more, we don't have that conversation as often as we used to.
I kind of want to talk about pricing because I think it's an interesting conversation. During the pandemic, it seems like my clients and like in our industry and everything, everybody was very resistant to price increases. Like, we've changed our business models, we've changed how we're helping people. Like, every time I turn around, I'm learning new pandemic tax legislation, and people are just like, well, you can't raise prices right now. I think that's going to be even harder post-pandemic because I feel like everybody's more cost sensitive now. Are you finding that to be true?
So they're definitely more cost sensitive right now, because they're seeing and realizing and feeling the cost increases that are actually showing up in their, right up there in their face. Those top line cost categories that they do pay attention to every day, things like labor and taxes and real estate and cost of goods sold. So yeah, I mean, we definitely are seeing their sensitivity to it, and part of what we're trying to bring attention to with our clients and prospects is the fact that it's not just those big ticket items, that those smaller ticket, less recognized costs are also going up. And I don't think there's any hesitancy from service providers across the board to increase prices now because they didn't do it during the pandemic. And now they're like, I either have to try to make up for the profitability that I lost over the last 18 months, or frankly, say it any other way, I can, right? As a service provider, I can increase my costs because people really need it, where over the last 18 months, maybe they didn't need it as much, or they could live without it, or did live without it.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's an interesting conversation. I mean, I like to just pay attention to what's going on in my industry and the event industry. And, I'm just watching a lot of the time, about, how people feel about pricing and how are they changing pricing. And there's been a lot of loud people like, you can't raise prices on your clients. I'm like, do you guys know how many sets of tax legislation we had to apply this last year? 5 sets. And I'm learning about this last set still, right? It's like one of those things that like happened in the middle of the tax season. So I learned what I needed to learn. Now I'm learning about the rest of it. But this stuff is going to have ramifications throughout the next couple of years.
Position to offer some wisdom, i.e., lessons learned from other people's lives.
Yeah,
about people's learning process on their own.
Think of some of the more pervasive ones. Like, every business owner is so different.
Sure. Or an interesting one too, right? Even if it's not necessarily pervasive.
An interesting one. So I can talk about like a price increase. So
Okay.
I had a client who does services, and he took on this business and kept the pricing structure
Okay.
because he was very, very afraid to raise prices. He lives in a very high cost of living, or the business is in a very high cost of
Okay.
living area. And the prices were not commensurate with that. And he had people driving 2 or 3 hours to come to him for this service.
Wow.
And they were booked, like fully booked. I think he worked like 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. every day.
Wow.
Like his hours were out of control.
Yeah.
Especially for this service. It's a hands-on person by person service. So I convinced him to do a significant price raise. Not as much as I wanted him to do, but he did most of it.
Baby steps.
Baby steps. And I said, even if you lost 20%, and I sat down with him and I said, even if you lost 20% of your clients at this new price, you'd be making more money
Sure.
in less time, right? And he was just like, okay. So he did it. And he calls me 2 weeks later. He's like, I've been home for dinner every single day this week. I was like, did you lose any clients? And he's like, one person mentioned it. He's like, but they're still coming. Like,
Wow.
And I was like, you didn't raise it high enough.
I know. I was about to say.
I was like, that's
First
not
thought, congratulations. Second
of all,
thought.
next, do it again. Let's do it again in 6 months or whatever, right?
Yep.
Thank you so much for listening or watching. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, or wherever you prefer to listen. If you learned something and found some useful information to apply to your business today, please consider giving us a thumbs up and a review. Until next week, be abundant.